The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavior loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. I talk to many different kinds of people, both in this work context and also in my real life. And talking to people about deep spiritual topics, about depth psychology or existential philosophy is always quite interesting. Because of course I come from a position now where I've talked so much about these topics and investigated so much about them that talking to people who have never actually went in that deep really feels like speaking a completely different language. And if you have gone deep enough, then you know that what really happens at the other side of existential realization has no words to describe it. And there are multiple layers that go deeper, deeper, and deeper. And the deeper you go, the less you can possibly describe it into words. That's why nowadays when I try to explain what I do for work, I connect it to psychedelic drugs. So people have some sort of reference frame that isn't too spiritually esoteric and also not just philosophy. But what this all ends up being is that it ends up being a very alone endeavor. And if you have thought about your own existential conundrum, then you have found out that a lot of it boils down to loneliness. Loneliness is kind of like the key thing that motivates seeking. We find ourselves in a situation where no matter what you do, nobody can really understand your life how you can understand yourself. And you kind of want to find a partner in life that can truly see you how you see yourself. And even deeper, it actually feels more like you wish you could be multiple people at the same time, like as if your partner could be in your own body for a few days. And then you could truly feel whole and interconnected. But you know this is impossible. And in the same way, it often feels like whatever truth is will always be foreign to you and external from you. And therefore, it is impossible to truly be one with it. And then you find that the path towards existential freedom is a path to extreme loneliness. And a lot of spiritual communities are more like howls from wolves who want to connect, but don't really have the language to connect. And then all people do is use a sort of, almost screaming or mourning language to interconnect this deep search for belonging. My personal relationship with, friends and family has deepened over time. And that in the sense that I feel more connected to people. I feel, more understood. I feel more present. I feel more myself. And at the same time, I'm the loneliest I've ever been. And now the feeling of loneliness is just completely absent. There's no need for me to be with anybody at all. And I feel always completely content being on my own. And if I were to describe a huge tenet of a certain stage of existential realization, is this happiness and contentment with loneliness. It's the sense that you truly don't need anybody else anymore in your own life. And this sounds very radical because, of course, I prefer to be around people and I like having a social life, at least from time to time. And I would never say that I prefer to be alone, as stranded on an alone island. That sounds kind of like fantastical, right? But there's truly the sense that my sense of loneliness cannot be surpassed anymore. And what happens mechanistically through ego dissolution is that the ego is the thing that feels lonely. And when you introspect about the nature of your own self, the nature of your existence and reality, then there's like this weird contrast where you notice deeper and deeper how you are extremely small in the grand scheme of things. And this is where a lot of philosophy starts, right? Like you are so small in the grand scheme of things, but your sense of self is actually gigantic. It is the entire universe from a very real perspective. It's you, right? Like if you die, from your point of view, the entire universe ceases to exist. So from your point of view, you are everything. And within that, there's the sense of identity, which is the ego, who sees itself as like the center of all attention and the center of the universe, to say. There's the universe on one hand, which seems to be infinitely big. Then there's your own sense of consciousness or awareness, which is like the sort of floating sensation of being, somebody. But then there's also the embodied sense of a personhood, which is your feeling of I, and your sense of identity, which relates to your own ego. And when you go into the nature of reality, what you're doing is you're actually moving inward. And by moving inward, you disrupt the layers of ego identity. And through that, you can kind of zoom out and look at reality as something bigger than yourself. And there's something odd that happens, because the more you see how small you are in relation to all of existence, the more you're inflating your own sense of importance. Because now you might say, I can see how insignificant my existence really is in the grand scheme of things. But personally, what the ego does is it says, therefore, I am the most important thing. So the more you expand, the more the space in between your own sense of identity and the rest of the universe becomes. So you become smaller, the universe becomes bigger, and then in this relationship, you are more alone than you were before. And then the pain of existential seeking increases while you are making progress, because you're moving to the core of your own identity structure deeper and deeper. And through that, you experience more loneliness, more sadness, more mourning, more fear, more wondering what the point of existence is, more seeking for fulfillment, and all of the stuff which the ego is built from. And therefore, the closer you go towards awakening, the more it hurts. And the more you seek for some sort of unity and wholeness. And then you move through the center, see through the ego identity structure as an illusion mechanism of the mind, become one with the entire consciousness, see the entire consciousness as one with the universe, and therefore you see yourself as eternally alone. Now there's no move back anymore. You've constructed, or you deconstructed your entire sense of self. You deconstructed your own perception of reality, and now what you have is emptiness. Now, what is confusing here is oftentimes people think they got rid of their ego when they did this, but it's more accurate to say that you kind of dissolve the transparency of the ego, and then the outer layers of your conditionings do kind of fall away. Like a lot of things that would trigger you before don't trigger you before anymore. Things you care about, you stop caring about. And then through the process of seeing through what the ego has caused, like all of the systems, the thought loops, the ideas that you had, the belief systems you had, now you stop believing in them. Now you stop being attached to them because you don't think you are them anymore. And now you can basically see through your reactions and see through the mechanisms of your ego without being identified with them. So you don't actually see your ego identity as more important than anything else in your own experience. But it's not that the ego then is gone. This process of going to the center and seeing through the ego, you do over and over and over again to different degrees. But there comes a point where the ego has been seen through so completely that you can have an experience that makes it so obvious that you are eternally alone. And there's no way this can ever be solved. It cannot be mended. And it is glimpsing this truth that causes people a lot of existential pain and the need for connection in spiritual communities, or just, in life in general. And the point really is to move so close to the center of truth and see it so thoroughly that the concept of being alone doesn't make sense anymore. And if I were to describe it from an experiential point of view, the way I describe it is that I see myself as a soup of sensations. There's no clear center to who I am, like experientially. Like you can look at my body and for you, I am my body. But for me personally, I am not more my right hand than my left hand. I'm not more my sound of my voice than what I hear with my ears. I'm not more my hair than I am my feet. And you kind of can get this intuitively. Like intellectually, it makes sense. But what I'm saying is how it feels like is that every position of my conscious awareness, including my body, is being looked at simultaneously with no distance. And there's no point where I'm like more identified. And I would also not really say that I am looking from the inside of my eyes to the outside world, or that I receive external sensations from the external world into my body. Like, of course, this is happening, but the perception is pure immediacy with all of it. Like, everything is looking at itself, being itself, and the distinction between one or the other is kind of, meaningless. I mean, I feel like so much of what I say is easily to be misunderstood, because of course it is not meaningless if I'm hungry or if I'm well fed or if I am, happy or if something sad happened and I'm sad. Like, there's a qualitative difference in experience in these, but ultimately there's like the lack of a center that makes everything appear to be absolutely neutral. And it is this neutrality that makes it also so that loneliness cannot actually arise as like this existential seeking thing that used to torment my life. It's the need for unity that is, basically born out of the illusion that you're not united already, but you are as whole as you could possibly be. The only separation that exists is mental processes that haven't been deconstructed. Every sense of loneliness in like an existential sense, where you want to kind of be one with truth or know the truth or finally be whole as a person, are patterns within your own brain that have caused an identity conflict within you. And therefore you cannot see yourself as whole because there are parts of you don't accept. And part of this seeing through the ego towards like the core of your own loneliness is looking at everything you do not accept about yourself, which could be, past mistakes, violent outbursts, feelings you don't enjoy, guilt that you have, desires you're not expressing, endless amount of stuff. And most people are blind to it because, you have trained your own body to not look at what you do not want to accept. And people are often shocked at how well the mind hides from itself and how the ego's entire operating system is based on hiding this from you. And my ego architecture audit is there to help you unhide it from yourself. And it's fascinating how good the body does this if you don't actively try to avoid this, or if you actively try to look at where's the deeper truth beneath an idea. It is this intellectual process to see where are you contradicting yourself through a lie, or where are you over-indexing a desire and not looking at the opposite. For example, if you have, let's say, a certain view about yourself, for example, that you are a charismatic person. And if you look at yourself like a charismatic person, then there might be a 10% part of your sense of identity that actually is socially anxious and doesn't like yourself. And now if I were to ask you, would you identify as a charismatic person? You would say yes, and completely ignore the 10%. Or if you were to actually mention the 10%, you would mention 1% out of the 10% and then say, this doesn't matter that much, and actually da-da-da-da-da-da. And humans do this all the time. You can see when they start to hedge about, an idea, or just you yourself. You can see when you start to hedge about something you want to say, and you kind of want to soften the thing that you're going to say, then this is what's going on. You're not fully committed or fully admitting the, fullness of the problem, so to say. And this is one example out of many, many things that cause this internal split within your own human mind. This sense that you can connect with others even after this sort of realization is something that a lot of people also cling to, which if you're not coming from this place, it can sound kind of scary. But I know for myself, there were like multiple scenes or multiple moments of realization where I knew I wouldn't come back from this, where I knew I went in so deep that I now am seeing a truth that I cannot unsee anymore. And I have covered the intricacies of the psychological problems that this causes in this video here.